I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark Biased Reactions.
Hi,
Welcome! Today we are here to be extremely biased about Secrets of Magic, a book that I'm so biased about that I wrote the book on being biased about Secrets of Magic.
You know what? I'm
Along
going to
with
make the cover
Logan
bigger
Bonner.
again because
For YouTube.
We really have to start with the cover of this book. It
Okay.
is gorgeous.
It's amazing. It's beautiful. And just sort of like the way that the treatment of the cover looks is a little bit different than other covers, like with the text at the bottom. And, I mean, obviously it has an amazing Wayne Reynolds picture where they're iconics that are doing a thing against some kind of a threat. Like, that's who everybody's got that. But look at some of the other details on the cover that you can see in there.
The really cool metallic trim.
Yup.
Yeah, the Elf says that the cover looks like a premium. Absolutely.
Yep,
It makes it
totally
look like
does.
The regular book look like a special edition.
It's got, like, these little orbs with, like, schools of magic in it, and it's got...
Oh, so those are to represent schools of magic?
I think so, because it's got, like, a skull and like a crystal ball or something.
Nice. Could that also
And-
be the four traditions?
I don't think so, but it could be.
I think you're right.
But it's got cool text, and it's a hybrid between like some kind of a grimoire you found and a usual Paizo cover in a way that's just super cool looking. So plus any cover that says Mark Seifter just makes me feel a little bit better. Helps me go against my anxiety on things and be like, but though I am on the cover of Secrets of Magic. So
I don't know what the font is, Sean Wolf. If it's like a proprietary font or what. I know there's like some tools you can use online if you like search for fonts that you can like find a font in an image and try to help you find it and see.
Yeah.
Like generally a lot of the fonts that Paizo uses in books are not free fonts, so it's probably not free, but you could probably find it.
Rico wonders if I'm bothered my name is never first because my name is so far down in the alphabet. But if you think about it, Rico, is that the name that comes last on like if you're doing like an opening credits for something is usually like the really experienced actor or something like that who rounds out the cast and is maybe not like the main lead but is super important in that show, and that's kind of what I've been doing in a lot of books. So it is totally alphabetical.
So
It's
in
not for that
conclusion,
reason.
with the last name starting with Z, I've been the mastermind all along.
Ha ha ha. But I was not the lead on Secrets of Magic. We'll see when we go in. It's Logan. And I haven't taken lead on purpose since Advanced Player's Guide. Although with people leaving, I've sometimes picked it up like partway through.
Mm-hmm.
So, without further ado, let's move on into the very excellent table of contents.
And in order to show off the very
Look how
excellent
good this
contents,
table of
they
contents
can't
is.
see it because the cover was too big, so I had to hide
Don't look how good this table of contents is. Oh, there's Leshibot. Now look how good this table of contents is.
it.
So it's not only a table of contents, and not only most tables of contents have pictures that are all from the book in other places. This picture of Enora in the table of contents, you will not find it anywhere else in the book. And she is the iconic Arcanist, and she's right here only in the table of contents. She's a table of contents exclusive. And not only that, but it's also got a bunch of other cool pictures. It tells you that APG is actually the Advanced Player's Guide.
Thanks for the sub, Elf. Thanks for gifting and
CR
cheering,
is core
Rico.
rulebook. LOGM is Lost Omens Gods of Magic, and LOWG is Lost Omens World Guide. But it also talks about all of the people who made this book a reality. And that not only is, obviously, it starts with authors Logan Bonner and Mark Seifter, but the other writers on this book were clutch and did so many amazing things. And that is, we've got Amir Ali Attar Olyai, Kate Baker, Minty Belmont, we've got Logan Bonner again, because Logan and I are in here again, James Case, Jessica Catalan, John Compton, Katina Davis, Jesse Decker, Chris Eng, Eleanor Farron, Leo Glass, Joanne Hong, Vanessa Huskins, Jason Keeley, Joshua Kim, Luis Loza, Ron Lundeen, Leanne Merciel, David N. Ross, Ianara Natividad, Chesley Oxendine, Stephen Radney McFarland, Shiv Ramdas, Mikhail Raccoon, Simone D. Saleh, Michael Sayer, Mark Seifter, Sen HHS, Shay Snow, Kendra Lee Speedling, Tan Xiao Han, Calliope Lee Taylor, Mari Tokuda, Jason Tondro, Clark Valentine, Ruvaid Verk, Andrew White, Landon Winkler, Tanya Waldridge, and Isis Wozniakowska. So, that is a lot of authors, and they did a lot of awesome things. Design lead is Logan Bonner, with other designers such as James Case, Michael Sayer, and myself. Editing lead, Avi Cool. Alongside all of the other editors from Paizo at the time, Janica Carter, Adley C. Fannin, Leo Glass, Patrick Hurley, Avi Cool, Eric Mona, Ianara Natividad, Kieran. Okay, so some of these names. Okay, so Tessa Newton, Lou Palazar, Simone D. Saleh, Shay Snow, and Vic Wirtz actually did some editing for things here. Some of these names are not up to date. The cover is Wayne Reynolds. There are a lot of interior artists, but their names are even harder to pronounce than any of the other names. Linda, do you want to give it a try?
Let's see. Alexander Alexandrov, Vidal Apollanes, Francesque Berold, Loic Convagia, Maxim Serkison, Sol Delia, Rael Dionisio, Godfrey Escota, Joao Fioza, Arturo Gutierrez, Miguel Regadon Harkness, Molly Hu, Yun Huai Huang, Andrew Huerta, Sami Khalid, Chris L. Kimball, Victor Manuel Leza Moreno, Ven Locklear, Chuck Lucas, Lucas Villavia Machado, Sam Perrin, Ian Perks, Rainier Peter, Ruben Pomenares, Addison Rankin, Wayne Reynolds, Raymond Sebastian, Jesse Surso, Halil Oral, and Dennis Spankov.
Plus art direction from Kyle Stanley Hunter and Sonia Morris, graphic design
Apologies to
from
anyone
Emily
whose name I
Crowell,
mispronounced.
and the usual upper managers who are on every book. So, yeah, that's a lot of people.
Paizo hires artists from all over the world, and that means that sometimes names are a little bit harder for someone who only speaks English to pronounce.
Yes. So, that's a lot of people to be biased towards, and they're all amazing. So, I think that that's basically it. The table of contents will tell you what chapters we've got in here. It's not like your normal PF1 book where it would just be like, here's spells, here's magic items, here's classes, here's archetypes. It's got Essentials of Magic and a Book of Unlimited Magic in there. That's pretty different. So, without further ado, shall we move on to Chapter 1?
Indeed.
Take a look at the diagram that begins Chapter 1.
The structure of magic.
Yes. You can see the 4 essences: mind, matter, life, and spirit. And then where they intersect: arcane, occult, divine, and primal magic. And then there are these little colorful circles for the schools of magic that surround each of the 4 essences and 4 traditions of magic. And they have little jeweled dots in places where they are more present. So, for example, transmutation is more present when it comes closer to the matter essence.
Yes.
And it's a little more likely that you transmute something in your mind than in your life force, for example. But you still find transmutation everywhere. It's just that's the little jeweled dots or light points.
Whereas
or
necromancy is more
stars in the
likely to be
constellation.
somewhere near life than it is to be near matter, for example.
Yes. Necromancy is pretty much going to be in life or spirit area the most. And life most of all.
Yes.
I mean, that's what you might expect. And so that's basically what all of these little circles do, and it's really cool. I find it heavily interesting. Uh, so this chapter also starts with the introduction about the structures of magic. Uh, just very quickly talking about the essences, the traditions, and the schools. What are they? Plus an introduction that is actually like not in world, because some of the introductions for other chapters are going to be in world, but this is the introduction for the whole book.
Yes.
So it talks about what are you going to find in each of these chapters, and talks about the idea of choosing expansions, because once you're past the advanced player's guide, the rules are not necessarily meant for every table, and you're going to decide which ones you're going to apply.
Yes, based on what kind of stories you want to tell.
Yeah, what do you want to emphasize in this game? The idea is to give you infinite possibilities, but not like infinite analysis paralysis and like mental load before you can actually start the game, by virtue of emphasizing what you want, and there's a giant toolbox for you if you do. So that leads to the introduction to the beginning of chapter 1. So there's an amazing picture of Ija the summoner,
that's cool.
with Tuku up here, and chapter 1 is Essentials of Magic. And so it starts off with an introduction that's almost like you are someone who is interested in magic, and this person who maybe is probably a relative who who like heard from your mother that you want to learn about magic, has now like sent you or the reader or whoever this is addressed to this packet of treatises to sort of help you figure out what you're going to do. And so the treatises here, there's one on each magical tradition written by someone from that tradition, some of which are like, actually 3 of which, Javin Vrest, Toph Ornelos, and Cordelia Perses are NPCs who have appeared in other places in Pathfinder before, who have written these. Actually, Cordelia's in On Essences, so 3 out of 5 if you count On Essences. And then there's the 8 Arches of Incantation, which talks about the 8 schools of magic. So these are very, very interesting, very cool, and one of my favorite parts of the entire book. So much so that when it comes to part of the book I wanted to take myself for freelance, I picked the treatise on essences.
And these really speak to one of the goals that that Logan had as the design lead for the book,
Yes.
of making a book that was about magic, but that had a lot of interesting things about magic that could apply even if your campaign wasn't in Pathfinder, and be something that you can come back to think about how to use that kind of mystery in your game.
That's right. And so you wind up with Principles of Elementary Thaumaturgy by Toph Ornelos, but actually by Mikhail Raccoon. Journeys of the Spirit and Flesh, which is by Zora Har the Wandering Cleric, but actually Shiv Ramdas. A Letter from Javin Vrest by Javin Vrest, but actually John Compton. And On Primal Practice by an unknown primal practitioner, but actually Simone du Soleil. And then On Essences by Cordelia Perses, but actually me. And 8 Arches of Incantation by unstated person in world, but actually Leanne Merciel. So we've got some really good authors and me who are writing for this section.
You're also a really good author, but I understand why you couldn't say that.
I'm just gonna say we have some really good authors and me. You can decide. So we've got Principles of Elementary Thaumaturgy, and it's not principles like LES, like these are our principles. It's principles ALS because it's like principal information about it.
Yes.
So which can be confusing at first, where you're like, wait a minute, which kind of principle is it?
So I'm noting when I'm looking at these pages that they're heavily annotated.
Yes, they've got footnotes from Juliana Faridius, Aram Zay, Jonatimo from the Gambia, and a bunch of other people. Like the College of Lingshen has Si Dao Yi, who wrote something. There's just a whole bunch of different footnotes because arcane scholars are basically going at magic like a scientist would. If we remember the diagram at the beginning of the book, they are focused on matter and mind. So they use mind to understand matter and the physical things in the world that can be understood by science, but in a magical fashion.
So then this is presented in a way that echoes a scientific paper with lots of citations to
it absolutely is. And it talks about different approaches, like the tools of creation approach, where the gods left behind a bunch of toolkit that they used to create things, and wizards are kind of finding those. As well as the soil and path method, which is sort of the more thaumaturgical approach, which is also called the channeling method, more common in the Magambia, Magambia kind of believed that maybe all four traditions are the same one, from Old Minji Tembe, and they believe that the universe is more flexible. It wasn't that the gods have this set of things and you're finding them, but that you're kind of tilling the soil by repeatedly casting the spell, and in some cases you have to be very powerful to like sort of create this connection and till it, and then when it leaves a rut, others can then follow in the same way. And so that means magic might be infinite and unbounded, whereas Tools of Creation believes there's actually a finite, maybe it's countably infinite, but some kind of a bound on what you could actually do based on the tools that the gods created at the beginning. And so
I'm seeing here in this first one, the Tools of Creation, that the idea is like, yeah, you know, if you cast a fireball, what you're really doing is making a little tiny version of a sun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Jenny's here.
Oh, hi, Jenny.
Thanks for gifting a sub, Rika. Yeah, you might be just filling out all of the physics of a sun in magic speak that the gods used to create a sun and then making a smaller one.
So are you exploiting flaws in reality, or are you helping to pave new paths in it?
And there are subsets of a subset between those beliefs. Like in Tools of Creation, there are multiple kinds of versions of Tools of Creation approach. And then it talks about like preparing your spells, being like building a palace with 10 floors, and you get to higher and higher floors, and the mental constructs can collapse and destabilize it. It's interesting stuff. So that's the Arcane Treatise. If we move on to Divine Treatise, it suddenly gets very different. Even though it is a divine treatise, but from Nethys, the god of magic, who is probably like gonna be the closest to looking at things more like an arcane person than many of the other deities, you could immediately see that it's just a very different approach. Even then, which talks about a temple of 10 doors and Nethys kind of giving grace, and what it means to channel the power of Nethys, and how he shares the power with you.
So it has a lot more to do with things that might be more abstract or metaphorical, or require more wisdom or interpretation.
That's right. And alphabetically, Divine comes after Arcane, but they're opposites. You've got Life Essence, which is about instinct and faith, and Spirit, which is the immaterial metaphysical building block of things, rather than Matter, which is the physical building block. So you've got exactly the opposite of Arcane. And you come a little bit closer because of Nethys, but it's still, you can see it's the opposite here. Talking about like the different deities, and like what it means that there are so many other gods, and it's very, very tied into faith.
What is the philosophy of what it means to use divine magic as well?
Yep. And how to unlock the new magic, given that Nethys is the one who's giving it to you, or your deity. What does it mean? Because it's different than a wizard who is just like, they've studied and now they've found this new thing. And so it talks about, you know, you're a tool, and when you make a choice, then you pass through different gates, and humility is the first one, for example, and they each lead you to greater magic. So, moving on from that is the Occult Treatise.
Yes.
And you can see that there, the Occult Treatise is not only a letter from Jovan Vest, but he's managed to, like, he's stamped on, like, a picture of himself with, like, with the DV initials and himself kind of like sneering a little bit here at the top of the page.
So this has a lot more of a handwritten aesthetic, the idea, which fits with the whole idea of scribbled notes about the mysterious.
That's right. Although, honestly, Javin Vest is like, he takes to task the people who are like, occult has to mean that it's tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
Because occult magic is a combination of mind, again, but with spirit. So it's the study of the immaterial and the unusual, the strange connections, things that you can't scientifically chronicle them because science doesn't necessarily... science and, like, the observable, that works with matter. It doesn't work with spirit. Spirit's different. And so, Javin Vest talks about how...
ideas, expression, emotion...
Stories,
yes.
Everything is a tapestry.
The tapestry of cultures.
Yep. Absolutely. Which fits... kind of parallel in some ways with the idea of the soil and path in magic, which makes sense since soil and path is the one that says that all the traditions have a connection. And so here you're binding a tapestry together with soil and path, you're tailing a path towards the magic. And these are two adjacent kinds of magic, arcane and occult. So it's not like it's arcane and divine where they're kind of pretty opposites of each other. So it also makes it easier to see why like bards really like occult magic, because it's totally in their wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that is the letter from Javin Vest and the occult treatise. So moving on is the primal treatise. So the primal treatise is like the most personal one. Of the four is a letter from a deceased grandmother to a grandchild who has just picked up primal magic, or is going to start.
Yes.
And so it talks like very, very personal level about what it means to be a primal practitioner, and sort of getting in touch with the world and the spirits of nature, the vitae, as Cordelia might say in the next treatise.
And it really speaks to the idea that, primal magic is personal when the letter talking about it being rare for two practitioners to channel their power in identical forms.
Yes.
So it's more of I can talk to you about my experience, but it's going to need to come from within and from your own connection.
Primal magic connects to those physical, material things, but via faith, instinct, and not via like sort of reason and logical thought. It's because life and matter. And so yeah, absolutely. You receive the mist of waterfalls, feel the moon's pull on the tides and on the very blood coursing through your veins. And then it's like, oh, when are we going to get to spellcasting? Well, this is the magic. So,
yeah, sure, you've got, you're going to have the rituals, you're going to have the objects that help you attune, but the connection and the instinct are most important.
That's right. So that is the primal treatise. Shall we move on to On Essences?
Yes.
All right. So
you're very, very familiar with this.
Oh yes. It is On Essences. It is in edit for a second edition of the treatise, originally published by Marquise Cordelia Perseus, but she sent it to Lazarel of New Thassalon, who is a oracle of lore, to be an editor. Cordelia is a diviner wizard, and so oracles are divine, so they're like the opposite, right? They've got the other two kinds of essences, which is good because like a wizard's not always going to be able to explain spirit or life the best. So this is written by a wizard, so of course it has an abstract. To understand the nature of magic, we first need to understand the four essences that compose it. And then it gets into talking about each of the four essences, and Lazarel puts in a note.
I like that one there. We'll start with matter, material essence, most concrete and easiest to understand. The latter statement is subjective and assumes the reader's primary focus lies with arcane or primal magic.
Yep, that is the editor's note.
Yep. I like that.
Yep. Lazarus always has notes in there. They're usually good, and I really love the illustrations here. That really just looks like an illuminated manuscript of some kind. Here's the next one.
Meanwhile, pure matter with no other essences is just an object, like a chunk of rock, a flow of water, or a breeze of air. You might want to note the presence of pure life essence entities in stones, water, and the like, used for spells like Stone Tell rather than save the top for later. A single stone might not have one, but a mountain likely would.
Yep. And it goes on, it talks about matter, it talks about mind, and Lazarus doesn't, like, have as many notes about matter and mind, also because those are, like, kind of Cordelia's wheelhouse, but then there is sort of a thing here where Cordelia is trying to suss out which effects that are sort of affect your experience as a consciousness are and subconscious, which ones come from mind versus spirit versus the instincts from life. And so she tries to separate it out, and Lazarus is like, well, that's not so bad for someone steeped in the study of the astral, but it might have been easier to do it this way. In a different order, where you didn't just do the two that are wizard ones first. And then there's spirit, which is the building block of the metaphysical. It talks about quintessence and how some beings, like celestials and fiends, are built just directly out of spirit. And ether, the so-called fifth element, and how that's very similar to quintessence. And then there's things like where it's like the outer planes, such as heaven, hell, and the like. And then in parentheses, there's the editor's note.
I trust your readers are aware of the names of the outer planes. Perhaps you could drop this reference to simplify this sentence.
And that's great because also, like, if a new player or someone who doesn't know the setting is reading this treatise, then they might not actually know the names of the planes, but in-world people would know the names of the planes, and Cordelia is just over-explaining them. So, it kind of works on a variety of levels.
Lazarus is way snarkier than any experience I've ever had with an editor.
Well, Lazarus just knows that he's gonna redline it as he sees it. And then there's the part where Cordelia goes on about Vitae, which are the supposed spirits of life energy, even though they don't have the essence spirit. They are made entirely of life. And where she just goes into a rant, and he's like, this is useful, but phrasing it as a rant, you're likely to turn off scholars who had been misusing the word. I suggest rephrasing this less accusatorily.
Rico thinks the most impressive thing is that Cordelia left exactly the right amount of space for edit feedback.
Yeah, it's very surprising. Honestly, I wasn't sure how it was going to show up. I thought it was going to, like, have bigger margins or something, and then like have them in the margins. But it looks nice, but it is true that it is strange that there's exactly enough space for editing feedback like that.
They both got magic.
Whatever,
I'm sure
it's magic. He magically moved the typeface.
Move the typeface to stick his comment.
And then life comes in last, and Cordelia talks about Cassia Zero, who's an atheist, and Lazarus was like, is it necessary to antagonize your audience by referencing a polarizing work? It's like, this is not bad for a wizard, but your Taldan bias is showing. Just a bunch of other funny random comments and talk about the essences. Moving on to the 8 Arches of Incantation. So, the 8 Arches of Incantation is written by some unknown conjurer, which you can tell because the conjurer is like, conjuration is the best. But some unknown conjurer has written it, and we added in some things of like, Leanne had some of these already, and then Logan's like, let's add even more of these little Zodiac style things to each of the schools. So now
animals and plants.
You know what your harmonic colors, celestial body, season, plant, animal, stone, and harrow cards are for each of the schools. It talks about like, what does it mean to be someone who use this school of magic? Why is it important to everybody? And what about a wizard who's just like super specialized in it? And like, what does that mean about your psychology, your strengths and weaknesses? And it goes through one by one. So it's got abjuration. Your animal is the tortoise. Conjuration, that you are the spider.
So everything here is written by a person who cares about that school, right? Primarily.
No, I think the conjurer wrote all of them.
The conjurer said, "Let's begin our survey with the most essential school, abjuration."
Yes. But later says that that it's essential to banish extraplanar foes, but also can have issues because it's very reactive.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So the conjurer did write these.
I'm pretty sure it was a conjurer. There can be no dispute conjuration reigns supreme among the magical arts.
Yep.
Then divination is unjustly dismissed as the weakest of schools, but such by Thessalonians. And says that the divination is important. Your animal is the ox. Enchantment. Your animal is the cobra, because it can mesmerize people. Talks about, like, what does it mean to be able to manipulate people's emotions with your magic? Like, how does that twist you up? It can really mess with you. But what is it? But it also could make you very powerful. It could make you someone who could be an exceptional leader, or someone who leads from behind. Then there's evocation, which is like, it's funny because it's kind of like the Chad. It's like, my favorite planet is the sun. My season is summer. My animal is hawk. My plant is fireburst flower.
Tarot cards, the bear
and the cyclone.
I mean, evocation is the like elemental destruction.
Yep.
Type stuff.
There was a question about how like teleportation fits into conjuration. So it does talk about the fact that there are a few related concepts. Basically, whether or not you can bring something into an area, whether you use teleportation to bend space, to move across vast distances. Like, conjuration is all about either moving something to you, possibly creating a simulacrum of something when you do so, or moving yourself to somewhere else.
Okay,
by
so
bending
it's like
space.
bending. So bending space is how teleportation works.
Yes. So yeah, evocation is like, magical blasting. Sheer destructive power. It's not necessarily the most subtle.
Yes.
Of all. Okay, it's definitely not subtle. At all. And it is required a reputation in certain circles as a rather simplistic discipline. Not entirely unfair, but it can be something of a blunt instrument. But it may not be useful in resolving locked room mysteries or diplomatic crises, as it is against a marauding giant or goblin horde.
Yes.
It also is kind of usually transient, where it just kind of goes and burns something,
Quick flash,
and then it's done. Yeah, flash in the pan. Mm-hmm. It says here, the old joke says the only permanent spell effects an invoker leaves in the world are scars.
Yeah. And then you get over here with illusion, which just starts with, what is reality? Which...
a miserable little pile of secrets.
I know, I mean, like, that just really gets at what it would be like to be an illusionist, right?
Animal chameleon.
Yes.
Yep. No, it even says illusionists can sometimes lose track of what is real or not.
Does an illusion alter what's objectively real by bending light or altering tactical qualities, or are they merely tricking senses?
Yep. And obviously, illusions have their strengths and weaknesses as well. They're not necessarily as good against mindless creatures, although some kinds of illusions can work well against them.
What does that mean for what an illusion really is?
But then the author points out that, like, if you're dying in a blizzard, you could make an illusion so you think you're warm, but you're still gonna die in the blizzard in the end of the day. Or you need to get your army across the river. Mm-hmm. You could make an illusion that there's a ford across the river, but then everyone's gonna drown So it won't actually do the thing that you need it to. And that's sort of the weakness there. Then there's necromancy. Your animal is the raven.
Yes.
It's divided into vitalism, the energies of life and death to heal and harm creatures. Soul magic, which goes into spiritual effects and potentially inflicts curse on victims. And then undeath. And the author is not a big fan of undeath. And basically not a huge fan of necromancers in general, and thinks that the benign study of necromancy may be just a fig leaf behind people who want to do create undead. And as you can see in the Essences Treaty, also, when you create undead, you're twisting the essence, the part of life essence that is the negative part that is supposed to destroy into creating, and it's kind of an anti-life that is, like, pretty much guaranteed to be anathema to life, and is not good.
Yes.
In fact, it is evil.
Necromancy does not evil. Healing now.
Yeah, no, necromancy is not always evil. The undead part is, because it is going against the fabric of the universe to create this anti-life that is anathema to life and wants to snuff it out. Even if an individual undead can hold that at bay because of their extreme willpower, they still have it within them. And then transmutation, changing something.
Oh, it's the caterpillar.
Yes, the animal is caterpillar.
That's very fitting.
That's right.
Transmutation is extremely versatile. Yeah, definitely in Pathfinder First Edition, there was a tendency for transmutation to be the greedy grabber of as many spells as possible.
Yep. It had in the core rulebook it was pretty balanced, but then in later books it was just like, why does transmutation get 3 times as many as everybody else? And transmutation is, yeah, absolutely, it's extremely versatile. You do have to change something into something else, so you have to have something that's there to change. It's pretty visible, and that's kind of the thing there. It talks about the fact that transmuters may wind up going and being like, we're going to create an owlbear or something, and creating like weird evil or not evil hybrid creatures.
Look into like the flavor that surrounds creatures in different bestiaries.
A wizard did it.
And see how many creatures are described as like, yeah, exactly. Some wizard did it, or somebody magically created this creature, and that's, you're talking about transmuters when that happens.
So there are a very small number of rules that are also in this chapter. The magical backgrounds.
Yes.
So you can have a common background and be an academy dropout, an astrologer, an eidolon contact, a false medium, a magical merchant, a magical misfit, a musical prodigy, an occult librarian, a plant whisperer, a street preacher, or a student of magic. And those are common backgrounds that have pretty common stuff that you might expect.
They fit along the general, hey, you've got the ability boost, you're trained in this and this lore, you get this skill feat, etc., etc.
Yep. But then there's rare magical backgrounds for when you are a really, really weird person. Anti-magical, where just like, yeah, you know what? You cannot magic, and magic has a 10% chance that it doesn't work on you. Good magic, bad magic, all magic. It just might not work. Or chosen one, where your birth fulfilled some kind of prediction, and you now have the ability Prophecy's Pawn, where when you fail something, you can use your chosen fate to allow you to reroll, but then for the next day, the GM can force you to reroll something, and you can't use the your ability to reroll again until the GM force rerolls on you, or until the next day, whichever comes first.
I can see why both of these would be rare, for sure.
Yep. There's Genie Blast, where a genie may have put some kind of a wish on you that was kind of vague, and you wound up getting a vague beneficial effect, so that once per day when you're about to roll something, you wish aloud for success and roll twice and take the higher result. There's a magical experiment, where you basically gain one special ability from your magical experimentation, either enhanced senses, or resistant skin, or a touch telepathy. Then there's Seer of the Dead, where you just like randomly sense spirits around you. Song of the Deep, where you basically were saved by sea creatures and now you could breathe underwater.
Oh, interesting. You could choose to lose the ability to breathe air when you take this background, so you can only breathe underwater. If you do, you gain a second ability boost.
That's right. Time Traveler, where you come from a different time into this time, and you have a bunch of random lores and can bend time, which makes you quicken to stride once per day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's basically the backgrounds, and that is the end of Chapter 1!
Alright, awesome. Shall we say goodbye to YouTube?
Alright. Bye, YouTube. See you next time.
Bye!